Okay, so on to part 3 of my embedded language. So now we get to play with actual code. Um, Before we jump directly into the code, I just want to point out a couple of things that we're going to be playing with in here, and of course we'll talk more about it as we do the actual code. But we have these containers again that I've already discussed, just to make sure that we're clear on them. So we have this one which is located with the tilde key, so that's under your escape usually on a North American keyboard. You'll have right next to the one here is a little wavy line, like kind of like an ocean wave, and this thing that looks sort of like an apostrophe. It's not the apostrophe that's located with the quotes. It's a special character. And this is used to hold commands, things like get attribute, list relatives, polycube, etc. Commands that you're going to be doing. So sometimes you want to contain the result of a command, And so in order to do that, you have to put a little container around it so that it goes in. And for Maya to know how to treat it, what to do with it, it wants you to put it into these little hash marks here that basically denote that what's going to happen in here is an action to be performed, and then the result will then be passed on to something else. So this usually will come after in equals. Another thing are these circular brackets, and circular brackets, of course, like to combine things. They also used at the start of loops, so not to contain the actions that the loops are performing, those are the curly braces, but just what kind of new variable we're going to be applying, or what kind of counter we're going to be applying. So just kind of the rules for the loop before we get into the actions of the loop. And then combining things, you can do things like combine variables where it will string together multiple words. So, I like, or cheese, good, whatever. You also can do math combinations in here. Now, math combinations don't have to be done in this way, but Maya will accept them in this way. So you go ahead and put, brackets on there. And of course, you can even combine variables with a plus here with pieces of text as well, literal text. And literal text comes in these quotation marks. So that's what we're going to be looking at here. Okay, so we're here in Maya, and I've just got a simple object in the scene, and I've got just the attribute editor open off to the side to be able to evaluate the thing that we're going to play with for this script. So it's going to be a semi-useful script, but it shows you a number of different things that you're going to want to do. So the script editor, which of course is located right here, usually provides different things like results and feedback in this area when it's not fully open. This is always giving you a little bit of information. You always have the command line where you can go ahead and put command lines in there, again, which are MEL, so they're basically a trimmed down version of the script editor. But when you pop it open, you get this whole thing, and I've just put it in a separate panel here. And you have your history, everything that you do inside of Maya, be it selecting something or creating something, and even deleting something, will be given to you in the form of MEL commands. So polypipe here, create polygon pipe. So polypipe is the main command, and all these little things with these dashes here are what we refer to as flags. So select -r, which would be relative. Polycube 1 is the name of the object that you want to select. So you have all these commands that will pop up, and you can just simply grab them, middle mouse button, drag and drop, or you can use Control-C, Control-V to do things like copy and paste, so on and so forth. While you cannot manipulate things here directly, you can always bring them down, and when they come down here, you'll notice color coding will occur. So commands will show up in this teal color, and literal text will show up as yellow. Some other types of, not quite commands, but like our for loop, for example, for, in, each, or no, not that's not in this one, int, float, string, and so on. These things all show up in green. So you have a different set of colors that can apply to these. If you don't really like the colors that are there, you can of course go ahead and modify them under the color settings, and in this window you kind of go down to the bottom to the script editor, and that's where you have your keywords, your strings, comments, which are often a little bit difficult to read, I find, and then commands and variables. I don't know why it says variables, because it's really just commands that show up, and then the regular text and stuff like that. So there's not really a lot that is color highlighted, but for what's there you can make some changes should you desire. Some other things about this script editor that you might appreciate are the fact that you can have things like auto command completion. If it recognizes the command you're about to do, it can try and help you that. Path completion, if it thinks it knows what path you're about to talk about, it'll give you options relating to that. You can get tooltip help for certain things that you write down, and of course a quick help menu, which will be a searchable thing off to the side here. We can type the command and it'll come up quickly, the information that you need with regards to it. So there's little helpers that are around to assist you. So I want to start off, of course, with some lovely curly braces. So I'm just going to hold down Shift and put those in. The curly braces are right next to the P key on the keyboard. I didn't need to put more than one, because you notice when I pressed enter it added one for me. And this is my trying to be friendly. It's also putting in indentation automatically. You'll notice that as well. It's gone ahead and done a tab for me so that it will put that indentation and make things a little bit easier to read. The reason why I'm putting these in place is the local versus global variables that I was talking about before. Think of these as kind of a safety net for what you're about to do. If you create a value such as I'm going to need a string here, let's say. So I create a string and I'll call this select, and of course because it's a string and it's for a selection, it's automatically going to be an array, so I'm going to put square brackets in there, and then it's going to equal something. Well, in the act of doing this, if I don't have these, I should actually be a little bit closer, tidier. If I don't have this object in between these, it immediately becomes a global variable, a variable that will sit inside of Maya and just kind of hang out. So the next time if I try and do something, let's say for example, I forgot to put those square braces, because I'm not used to doing it all the time, I forget to put there. Well, I've defined this as not an array. That's the type of variable that this is. And because I'm establishing it, if I do this directly as a global variable, Maya will get upset if I try and add those little things afterwards. So it's best to have this little safety net. There's no real reason, unless you have to have a variable that's going to be sitting around all the time, to actually put it as a global variable. So nesting it in these things is probably a good idea. So let's go further with this. I have a string, which is just things like labels, names, etc. Going into this thing, which I'm calling select. I could call it something else. I could call it Boo Boo the bear or whatever. But as long as it makes sense, it's good. And it always starts with that $sign. So what does it equal? So I've defined it as a string variable. I've given it a label. And I'm going to say it's going to equal something. Well, what I want to do here is I want to give it the current selection. And to get the current selection, I'm going to have to do a command. So that means I need to contain the command, the result of the command, saying do this command, give the result to $select. So I'm going to go ahead and hit the tilde key twice to get that. And just because I like to do it, I like to have my semicolon just hanging out. I'm going to go ahead and put that semicolon in right away. So again, remember, you cannot ignore the semicolon. Just like you cannot ignore a full colon or you will poop your pants. Yes, yes, I did say that again. And I know what you're thinking. Is he going to use that joke again? Well, depends. Anyways, string and select, and our little semicolon, and we've got to put something in there. And I'll try and resist the dad jokes for a little while. We want to put something in like a selection. What is a selection? How do we get a selection? What's the command for selection? Well, we have the command select, but I'm not making a selection. I want to see what I have as a selection. So that is ls. Really simple, list selection. A lot of commands in Maya will have long names and short names. Some of them you'll have to put the long name because the short name hasn't been put in there. But this one, they figured chances are people are going to use this a lot. They don't really want to type out list selection every single time. So we have a simple version of it, ls. And it's going to want a flag, typically speaking, about what it is that we want to put in there. And so there's two common ones. One is OS, which is ordered selection, and the other one is SL, which is the selection list. Selection list is probably the more common one to be used, and honestly they're very similar. I often find in terms of the results that I get from both of them, I get much the same kind of thing. So you can play around with it. Either one will be fine. Just we're putting a flag to let it know that it's going in there. So what's happening right here is now this is going to put the current name of the object or objects into the value of select. Cool. Now what? Well, I've got the information. I need to do something with it. What I would like to do is, of course, I want to turn on my primary visibility at a whim. So I want to do that on a number of objects. This is the reason why you really write scripts for the most part, is to be able to go ahead and affect attributes or repeat certain actions to an object again and again and again. And for that I need a loop. But I also need to know what kind of commands I have to do. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to create a variable that I'm going to use for turning on and off this. So I've got this command here, and it's giving me a 0 and 1, so I need something to put that in. In some software programming, you would make that a bool or a boolean command, so it'd be like bool and then name this thing. But Maya doesn't offer that. What it offers is you have to use an int, which is a whole number, and it works just fine. It's just storing the value, and they really didn't see a need, I guess, to store a boolean in that particular case. Because of the nature of how you're going to be using MEL. So it's an int, and I'm going to give it a name that makes sense to me. So $, and I'll put viz, short for visibility. I'm going to know what that is. Anybody who reads my script probably can figure out that's what it's for, especially with the command that's going to come later. So I think this works just fine, and I just have to establish that it's going to be an integer. I don't have to fill it with anything right now. I just need to let Maya know that it's there and it's ready to be used. Next, I'm going to give myself a little bit of space because I'm about to start some, major loop action going on here. So I'm going to start with my for, which is going to establish a loop. And then I pick what kind of loop do I want to do. Do I want to do a counter loop, where I'm putting the $I and kind of incrementing it and determining how many times it can go through and count? Or am I doing it to a selection of objects? And the answer is clear. I'm going to be doing it to a selection of objects. So inside my lovely little brackets here, I'm going to put in two things. One is going to be my selection, and the other is going to be a new name for a variable that I'm going to use for this purpose. So I'm going to say for every object in $select, which is up the top here, you're going to do something to them. So there's my select right there, that connection, and this is a new variable created exclusively for the loop. I'm going to go in here, create my first, shift, press enter, and it's going to create the other one for me. And it's going to indent again automatically for my convenience. And I'm going to start performing an action. Well, I have this set attribute. Looks pretty useful. Bring it down, we see the gold lettering here, we've got the command, it's got a 0, it's pretty cool. I'm going to take that and I'm just going to copy it and paste it again. So I'm going to change this by one letter, get. I want to get the attribute. And what attribute do I want to get? Well, I want to get an attribute which is going to be my current selected object. And then I want to set the attribute as I want it. So for the get attribute, I don't need a value because it's going to give me a value. So that's it. To set it, I do need a value. So one letter and then taking off the value, immediately I've got two sets of commands. But these are only useful right now for something called polycube shape 1. Well, I don't really want that. I want to kind of grab the object that I need. So I'm going to change this by just going up to the dot here and just deleting that. This is the name of the thing that I want. So there's my literal text and I want to keep there. That part I want to keep as literal. But this I want to change to something unique. I want to go ahead and take my objects as I create them and put them in there. Well, for that we're going to be doing an addition. And in order to combine things, we have to put the circle braces. There we go, we got our circle braces and we're going to do our combination. So it's going to have a plus. We're going to add stuff in here, right? And what are we going to add to this? Well, we're going to add $sign object. I could do a short form $sign obj if you wanted to call it that instead, but since I called it object, I have to type it exactly as it is. So there we go. I now have it saying get the current attribute of the selected object and its primary visibility. But wait, something's wrong here. When I'm using this command, which is list selection, it's going to take the object that's currently selected. And I've selected pcube1. But when I set the attribute, it's going to pcube shape1. Well, this is a problem. The problem is I'm not getting the information on pcube1, which I've selected. I'm getting the information and changing the information on its shape node, which is a different node. I don't have it selected. It's part of this whole hierarchy, but it's not the part that I've selected, which means I need to change what kind of input I'm putting into here. So remember, select is the list of every object that you have in there, and in the for loop it's grabbing one at a time and putting them in here. And if I go ahead and I apply this, it's going to look in here for anything which is called primary visibility, and it's not going to find it. So it's going to give me an error. It's going to give me a syntax error. So I need to make sure that grabbing the shape node. This doesn't have it. If I go through the list selection command, where I grab hold of that and I look for it, I can tell you right now that I'm not going to find a flag for me to get specifically a shape node. But there is another related command that will do that for me. And that command is called list relatives. Now again, remember the way that a lot of these things are kind of aligned inside of Maya is that the first letter is usually lowercase, and for every new word that's combined in there, it's uppercase. So uppercase, uppercase, uppercase for each new one. So just remember, case sensitivity here is important. And I'm not going to do SL, that's for selection list, but I will do -S, which denotes the shape. So it's going to list the relatives of the current selected object, which is p^1, and find its shape and store it in there. Lovely. Okay, coming along. So what do I have here? I've got a string. It's creating select. It's going to grab all of the objects in there and give me their shape node specifically. I've got an integer, which is waiting for numerical values that it's going to make use of. And I've got a loop here that I've got going on, giving me the attribute for the current selected object, first object in the list, second object, third object, and so on. And it's going to give me its primary visibility. Now it's not putting it anywhere, it's not doing anything with it, and that's what this was for. So I need to stick it inside of my viz value. So in order to do that, I need to do a couple things. First, put viz there. Next, I'm going to say equals, and that's good. And then I need to do something, just like I did up here. Notice the command. It has to go into those funky little guys right there. So I'm going to go ahead and put that in. Boing. Boing. And now it's being stored. Great. And guess what? I can go ahead and take that value, and I can store it. So I can grab the current value and I can apply the value on there. Not bad. Again, a slight problem though. If I take it and it's off, it's going to go ahead and apply it as off. Well, that's not useful. That's not what I wanted. I want to be able to toggle it. I want to switch it on and switch it off. I could create two versions of this script, and I could say, actually, you know what? I'm just going to completely eliminate this line here. Let's comment it out with 2 slashes. It turns red. And I could go ahead and make one script where it just goes 0, and another one where it goes 1, and then I wouldn't need any of this stuff. But that's not what I want. I want to be able to go ahead and toggle it. I want to use one button and make it do its job. So in order to get this kind of response, I'm going to have to do something a little bit more clever here. I'm going to have to make a slight adjustment to my code. And it's really small, it's really simple. And it comes with a special symbol, which we usually use for yelling or whatever. It's the exclamation point. And what this means inside of MEL and other programming languages is not. So I'm saying, go ahead and put in the value of this, but not that value. The inverse. It's essentially going to invert whatever value this is. So that means that if it goes ahead and gets the value and it's currently on, this is going to give me the off value, and then it's going to apply it. So that's cool. I think I have it. I'm ready to go. So I'm going to grab all that, just either Control A or select to highlight it. I'm going to press Control Enter, which is going to run the command. Okay, so I'm getting a quick error here, and that means that I've done something wrong. So it's claiming that $object is an undeclared variable. It's also saying something else. So as I was having fun, I forgot to put something back that I had removed. So I told you at the beginning of this, I said we should make sure that this was an array, because it's storing multiple things. it's the potential of storing a whole bunch of stuff. So when it's a string, typically speaking, your object will be an array. And I forgot to put that back before we went forward. So let's see if it works now. Control A, enter, and voila, it works. Oh look, it's changed. Let's watch it again. Enter, control enter, control enter, control enter. And you see that primary visibility is now turning on and off, on and off, on and off. Excellent. So I've got my script working. Now what? Well, nothing really if you want to keep it like that. But I'd like to take a moment to look at how we could potentially refine this whole piece. How could we take it and make it a little bit more efficient? Well, first of all, I'm establishing this variable, and this variable is exclusively being created for the purpose of storing the selection. And in order to do that, it's just going ahead and it's running this selection. So I'm looking at that and I'm thinking, well, why do I have to create a variable if I'm not going to be using it again and again and again? I'm just really using it here. Well, I don't have to. That's actually the answer. I can go ahead and take this and say, you know what? I'm just going to copy that. And I'm going to put it right here instead. And then I can just get rid of this line. Well, that's cool. Does that work? Can I do that? Control Enter. Yes, yes you can. And it still functions, still works. I don't actually have to store the value if I'm not going to be using it multiple times. I can just go ahead and work with this. The only reason why I wouldn't want to do this is if somewhere during this action here, I was changing the selections. Right? If I was going to go in here and I was going to change something about the selection, select a new object and parent it and do some other stuff, I might not necessarily want to do that. But I'm not doing that. I'm just changing some variables in here, so I can probably work with that. And in fact, even then, whatever the current selection list was, it's going to go through all of them before it even comes back to this command anyways. So that should still be safe. So what next? Well, I'm establishing this is an integer, and I'm establishing it outside of it so I could use it again later, like somewhere in here if I wanted to. But I'm not intending to do that, am I? I'm not really intending to use it more than just kind of this one space. And I'm going ahead and putting this information in here anyways, so why don't I just get rid of this and do this? So I'm establishing this in integer, taking it and putting the values in, just the same as I did for the selection before. It should be completely possible, right? Shouldn't give me any trouble. So I'm going to take that and I'm going to just reduce it down again, getting nice and clean and efficient. And I'm going to take that, Control Enter. Does it still work? Yes, it does. So now I've got, not only do I have a nice, clean representation of code, but I've got an efficient one as well, where it only does what it has to when it needs to. And this is how you can make sure that your code can run a little bit faster. Use these things when you need them, what you need them for. Think about, do I have to establish a unique variable for that, or can I just kind of do it in one go? So there you go. There's your first general command. So anything that happens on the shape node that you want to toggle or change whatever would be done exactly in this way. So you can change anything. Just go ahead, turn something on and off, like smooth proxy shading. Look, 0, 1, visible and reflections. There we go. What else we have? Left-handed, right-handed. Oh, well, these things are not changing anything up here that I can see. Well, something else that I can do is I can go ahead and turn on this really fancy command here, which is echo all commands, which means anything that you do will be echoed. I'm going to say something very important about it first. Use it with caution. Use it just at the moment you want it and then turn it off. just going to go edit to clear history, just to clear this. And it's important you don't do like a clear all, otherwise you're going to clear your script away. So just clear the history. And I'm going to go ahead and say echo all commands, and I'm going to immediately do whatever it is I wanted to do, and then quickly turn that back off. You noticed just by hovering over this, clicking on the menu, it started to bring up additional things. So this other stuff was not required. Get caps lock state, AE tangent space mesh, blah blah blah. So there's the command to make a change. And what did it change? It's not something that I ever changed myself, but it's talking about p-cube tangent space. I could probably look that up and see more, see if anybody's written any code with regards to it. Well, these things can be looked up pretty quickly. So that's it. For anything else that you want to do, you can always grab these guys here, right click, and you've got a series of commands such as command documentation for that particular command, which will bring up any kind of documentation for you. Just like that. It's loaded here. And as I mentioned in the last video, if you wanted to get into Python, you can simply click on the Python tab here, and it will show you the Python version of that same command. So you can go ahead and search anything that you're working in there, and it will give you information about that particular command and how to make use of it, including usually code examples, etc., lists of all the flags associated to it, so on and so forth. So that's just, again, just right clicking and going into command documentation. So there's your first little script, and hopefully that's something that you can make some good use of. See you in the next video.